Well, that worked.
It's working great now.
It is. And the whole country has an opportunity to get to work, hopefully. I
Amen.
hope that the people of America can realize that the only way we're going to get through this stuff is with a lot of faith and a lot of hard work, because ultimately, at the end of the day, elections are not about choosing who's going to be the emperor to rule our lives. At best, elections can be symbolic victories that help the culture orient itself with a kind of aesthetic direction, a cultural impetus, a kind of vibe, right? The vibes and those
Mhm.
things are so important. And I'm glad to have my inaugural program 1 week to the day that we had the biggest impact we've ever had on this show, and to bring my good friend Shane Kennedy as my uh, guest today to have some conversation, make it a quick show and just a little wrap up. So many things swirling around. Who knows what's going to happen? But I'm your host, David Gornoski, here with Shane Kennedy. Shane, take it away. How you doing?
David, thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you, man. I mean, you know
So,
what's you're. I like Shane because Shane has a great way of putting things into words. Sometimes, for those who don't realize, my show, A Neighbor's Choice, one of the clunkiest titles you could ever come up with for a news show that we did on radio and everything. But Shane has a great way of being able to, encapsulate some of the things that's going on in the world in a way that's very, very to the point. And we all have our wordy moments. I mean, Shane's a student of history, a student of economics, but someone who understands markets as well and how small business works. So, Shane, what's your take? First of all, we can get into. You can ask me what you want to ask, but I just want to ask you. You always have a good knack for things. How did you feel coming into uh, leading up to that Tuesday election we just had, and then afterwards? How did you feel, temperamentally and everything?
well, I thought Trump was going to win. I thought it was going to be razor thin margins though, similar to 2016.
Yeah,
And I was pleasantly surprised to see that the margins were actually pretty fat, and
yeah,
and he performed well in the swing states. And ultimately, I think it gets to the core. I think people are genuinely getting fed up with having this obese state,
mm-hmm.
that's just weighing down on all of us. It
Mm,
causes us to be anxious. It causes us to feel nervous. It makes people feel like there isn't any hope out there.
yeah, and
And,
that's
you
real.
know
Yeah,
the obese state is and the obese state, it makes people it makes people obese too.
well, yeah. I mean, certainly we have had quite an investigation on that subject matter on this show. Still working progress as to how to tackle that fully because we looked at ketogenic things, carnivore, we looked at this thing, that thing, looking at Ray Peat's bioenergetics, always investigating. I think Shane, you've said before that my show feels kind of like the next generation of what a university looks like, where you're interacting
Yes.
with different scholars and
Yep.
regular folks and scholars and everybody in between, and politicians. We kind of like a meeting house. This is an information clearinghouse.
Mhm.
That's how I describe what we do. And it's
Yeah,
not good marketing to it's not good marketing to have like 20 different sub shows on one podcast feed like we do. We have seed
mhm.
oil survival. We have this whole new emerging Ray Peat bioenergetics thing that we've been doing that doesn't really fit into any particular category. We have our neighbor's choice, which is what we're doing here, which is our classic news and current events focused show that we started on radio in 2018. We have Things Hidden, which is the anthropology stuff and the deep dive into mimetic theory, Rene Girard, and history and all that deep stuff. We do Science and You with Dr. You. We've got another show called The Science, which is all about the COVID pandemic stuff. I mean, it's like a whole lineup of network programming on one podcast,
Yeah.
and I enjoy it. But it's certainly not a smart marketing strategy, maybe, in terms of trying to like focus in on what most people think a show's supposed to be, where it's just you have a gimmick. I am libertarian guy. I'm sassy girl libertarian, or I'm spicy take Trump guy with a conspiratorial edge. It's like you're supposed to do like one thing and then drill in but we just go all over the place. We play all over the piano, and we have fun with it.
Well, and the simple fact is that people have ideas. People are not ideas. There's always a little bit of truth kind of everywhere. And in many ways, I kind of think what you do is you kind of scour around the field, and you're picking up little glimpses of truth everywhere.
Yeah.
And you're trying to put them all together and fuse, and it's like you're collecting puzzle pieces out in the middle of a field. And then what you're doing with your show and with the different shows is you're putting them all together. With the audience.
Yeah. Now it's like an investigation. It's an ongoing investigation, an adventure.
Now, David, something I wanted to bring up is, I don't know, I think it was maybe a few days before Halloween. Maybe it was a week before Halloween. I'm not really sure, but I remember news breaking, people saying that there were rumors that Donald Trump was talking about eliminating the income tax. And remember, prior to that, Donald Trump had been talking about not taxing overtime anymore, and not taxing tips. And and remember how there were a lot of rumors online swirling, asking the question: is there any kind of a connection between Ron Paul and Donald Trump? And there were a bunch of rumors swirling, and it really fascinated me, because I thought to myself, when you're talking about abolishing the income tax, and you're talking about not taxing tips, you're talking about not taxing overtime. I mean, that's paying homage directly to stuff that Ron Paul was talking about back in 2007 and 2008. And both of us were very much involved in that movement. And so I kind of had that swirling around in the back of my mind. And then when you interviewed Ron Paul last week, you were asking questions about Donald Trump, obviously, and the Trump administration. And I thought that was incredible when you asked him about whether he would be willing to go and help cut the government with, or help cut the budget with Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And how from that moment on, that ball started rolling all over Twitter. And I think there was an article that came out of I think the Post Millennial and a couple other places. And it started swirling everywhere.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing. How and I know you were thinking the same thing I was about. Well, is there a connection here? Is Donald Trump paying homage to Ron Paul? Is there something going on in the background there? And would Ron Paul have an interest in contributing something to the Trump administration?
Yeah. Well, Ron Paul is, someone that, like you said, I've had him on many times on my show. My first radio show of A Neighbor's Choice was in July, I believe it's July 4th or 5th of 2018, and Ron Paul was my first guest. Wow. And before that, I'd actually had him on, even before that, on my show when it was a podcast. A few years before that, I think 2015 or something, I did another interview. So I've been keeping up with him through the years and bringing him on the show. And one thing I noticed with Trump stuff is, it's like his whole platform, some of the most popular things they kept pushing, no tax on tips. That was a Ron Paul thing.
Yep.
I saw that some other politician on election day, on election night, when they were winning, he said, it was my idea. I'm the one that told Trump to do the, it was Wayne Allen Root, I think was his name, who was the libertarian guy out of Nevada. And he said that I gave that idea to Trump. So that was, I like to think I was the originator of no taxes on tips. And I'm like, no, why would you memory hole? That came uniquely from the Ron Paul presidential campaign, no tax on tips. They always said that was his one of his signature things in that 2012 race. But I looked at it and I saw Trump, and then I saw Trump, I think it was just a few days before the election. I think it was last Friday or something. He comes out with a video. We want to have a tax credit, $10,000 per child of a homeschool kid, Yeah. I said, what the heck? That's the only one I ever heard that say was Ron Paul. So I saw no tax on tips, no homes, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security,
Hmm.
He kept rolling them out like they were just looking at the greatest hits of Ron Paul's domestic agenda and taking them. Maybe they poll tested it. Somebody in the background
Yeah.
was poll testing to find out the best things. But you see, then he goes into abolish the income tax. Now, I wrote an article about that just several months ago for the American Conservative when Trump floated that out on Capitol Hill when he went to visit the Republicans, and he said, there was a rumor that started emerging that he was floating the idea of getting rid of income tax altogether. But they waited months later to trot that out near the end of the election to kind of hype up the promises like a drip, 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 drip.
Hmm.
But so when my point is that when they did that first story, when Donald Trump goes to talk to the Republicans in Capitol Hill, I did an article at the American Conservative reminding people that it was my interview with Curtis Ellis back, who was an economic advisor for Trump. Now he's passed. Curtis Ellis is the late Curtis Ellis.
I remember that.
Yeah. So I mean, I had him in the video interview, and I remember telling him on camera, because he wanted to do all these tariffs, and I said he kind of came from the nationalist populist scene, right? And I was kind of and I'm not a libertarian, but I saw some value in what Ron would talk about with getting rid of the income tax. So I told him in that interview, while it's happening, I'm like, well, you guys want to do tariffs, and the libertarian fiscally conservative guys want to do no taxes. So why don't we just fuse that together? No income tax, and then fund it with tariffs. That moment in history is captured in that interview. I believe that's 2020, right around that time, So I had to go back and look at the date. It might be even before 2020. I can't recall exactly, but he's since passed. But Curtis Ellis was a very important economic advisor for Trump. And you can see his wheels turning in the interview where I'm like, well, why don't we fuse? You guys want tariffs, but I was like, I don't want to do tariffs if we're not getting rid of the income tax. So stop taxing the individual and start taxing these corporations and basically countries. Make them pay the taxes, and the individual doesn't have to pay taxes anymore. And he's like, that would be a wonderful idea. You can watch it. We'll put the clip in the show notes so people can see it. But that was where I think, I don't know, but you always want to say, oh, I don't want to toot my horn, but sometimes you got to learn how to take the win. And I put that idea to that economic advisor, and he is in a really great position to help Trump steer the next term. And you could see him thinking about it. And I don't know if he went and fired off an email that day or what, but I hadn't seen him talk about that before. And if you see the interview, he looks, that would be great if we did that. So he doesn't sound like, oh, no, that's actually what I've always been saying, get rid of the income tax and replace it with tariffs. It was my idea. He wants tariffs. I was like, okay, well, how do you thread the needle between the fiscally conservative limited government guys? There doesn't need to be a tension, was what I was trying to say. You have the limited government and then libertarian type people, and then you have these populist nationalists that want to do protectionist stuff. And I'm like, thread the needle, meet them both ways. Get rid of the regulations, get rid of the income tax, and then give your tariffs, and that meets everybody's interest. You build a coalition. That's exactly what Trump did in this election. Yep. So I'm very proud of that I had a role in playing for that, and that's amazing. Whatever happened there, it's pretty clear.
It was incredible, man.
Then you get this thing with Ron Paul. So let's go back to that. The thing that's interesting about that is I'm looking at all these things and I'm thinking, okay, he's anti-war in his rhetoric. Trump, no wars. He's skeptical of NATO, right? He's skeptical of the WHO. These are all Ron Paul unique things in terms of presidential level politics. And I'm thinking, again, this looks like someone stole Ron Paul's homework on a lot of the things he likes. And Trump wouldn't like that framing, but whoever's in the campaign going along with what we're going to pick, it looked like it. And I just felt like Ron wasn't getting enough credit. So here's where my wheels start turning. Okay. I'm going to give you the insight about how I'm thinking about why I do the interview with Ron Paul on Halloween, last October 31st. Is that I'm thinking, okay, it was Sunday night, they had the Madison Square Garden rally. Remember that one? Yep. Big raucous rally, supposed to be this big scary thing that was happening. It was so dumb. I mean, it was just people cracking jokes and stuff. I don't understand. Total failure on the media's part. You know what I mean? They tried to hype that as a Nazi thing, and then New York almost went red. I mean, it just totally got wiped. And
Yeah,
they're near,
New York went from being D27, I think, down to like D12
in
or something like
California,
that.
see how red California starts looking?
Yeah,
Um, so that's not good for them.
no,
Maybe they need to back off the Nazi rhetoric. Did they learn that lesson?
yeah,
I think they can't press
they
that button.
probably haven't.
They can't press that button anymore, man. It's going to make them lose.
Well, the thing is
um,
probably going to make them double down on it.
mm. They're going to
You know?
try it with. They're going to try it with the border kids in cages narrative for the deportation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
they're going to
They're going to
resurrect
roll
that.
that back out.
Um, but anyways, so I'm looking at that Sunday Madison Square Garden, and I saw the clip of Elon Musk with the other guy that's the chair of the transition team, some Lutnick, I think is his name, Lutnick, a business guy, Wall Street investor guy.
Yeah. Yep.
And he says, so tell us, Elon, how much are you gonna cut? It's like a game show. And he says, well, I'm thinking at least 2 trillion. And everyone goes, whoa, big cheer, big pop. And I'm thinking, okay, at least $2 trillion. I'm like, that's Ron Paul level numbers right here when you start saying that. Remember Ron Paul's presidential campaign in 2012? He wanted to cut $1 trillion famously in the first year of his administration. That was his big proposal. And everybody at the time was like, that's radical. Here's Elon Musk saying, I want to cut, if I'm able to do the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE or whatever, DOGE, I want to cut $2 trillion, right? And I'm thinking, at least, he says. And the crowd goes wild. And I remember thinking, just in case the populist nationalist types don't think limited government's popular, listen to that pop that crowd just gave Elon's call for 2 trillion in cuts. See, what I'm trying to get at, you talk about connecting ideas and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. When leadership is about bringing disparate factions together that hate each other and finding the needle that works, that threads the needle, threads it all together. I remember when Trump was in office, the populists and the nationalist types were very dialectically obsessed with opposing limited government rhetoric or limited government proposals, deep spending cuts. They were like, no, we don't need that. The era of libertarian limited government has been repudiated with Trump. I'm like, no, you totally missed the entire point of his win. I said, if somebody had Ron Paul's policies with Trump's charisma and if somebody had Ron Paul's policies with Trump's charisma and all that stagecraft that he does, they could have won the 2016 election too. I remember saying that to them every time in the room in DC when I'd go to visit for different things. And they say, oh, no, it's all about the industrial. They were like nerds, you know. It's about the child tax credits that Ivanka is going to push. It's about the industrial policy. It's about tariffs and all that stuff. And they were trying to dialectically make it in opposition to the limited government proposals of cutting government that the neocons and fake cons had been running on for since Reagan, right? And they didn't understand the point that the people were saying because they were stuck in DC bubble groupthink. Right? They had to think dialectically. Oh, because Mitt Romney says cut government, that means he's libertarian fiscally in his rhetoric. And therefore, when Trump wins, but Mitt Romney lost, that means the country wants industrial policy and tariffs. No cutting government is not a big deal. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that, buddy. It doesn't work like that. You've totally missed the whole thing. And they did. So thank God in some ways that they lost in 2020 because it gave Trump an opportunity to repent of some of his mistakes, go through a persecution, go through a belly of well moment. And for the nationalists and the populists that were ascendant with the first Trump to realize that a lot of the lessons about cutting government that folks like Ron Paul pioneered were exactly what we needed to learn.
Yep.
So here we stand at a precipice. What's going to happen, right? What's going to happen next? But I want to just, since you asked that, I want to go into the inside thought. So I thought Musk wants to cut $2 trillion, but he's got a reputation. Well, Elon Musk is known for a lot of things, you know, great things, going to Mars, doing all these AI technologies and robots, but he's not quite associated with the concept of being a government spending cutter, right? I mean, he's someone who's gotten a lot of subsidies from the government over the years to get to where he's at. And so, you know, from the public perception of it, it's kind of like, well, that's interesting. I mean, we know he cut Twitter, but government's a whole nother thing. You know, you've got contracts that he depends on. You've got agencies and things that his businesses depend on. How's he going to really get in there and do this, you know, without having severe punishments, right? And so, I'm thinking, man, who is the most consistent person? Who is the number one guy in his name and his brand and his reputation for being the most serious about cutting government and modern politics in the 20th century, the last 100 years? Who would that be?
Dr. Ron Paul.
There's nobody else.
No.
Nobody. Not Barry Goldwater doesn't come close in terms of the massive cuts. Even if you want to try to put someone like that on the debate. Thomas Massey is wonderful, but he was mentored by Ron Paul, so he's still developing. He's still about to hit his prime, probably. He's still going. But for a legacy, a lifetime legacy, everybody, even the ones who don't like him or don't think he's relevant or whatever, they all agree Ron Paul's the gold standard when it comes to cutting government,
Yeah.
And so I thought, let's hear what Ron Paul would say to this idea that Elon Musk wants to cut $2 trillion. That was my idea. That's why I wanted to have Ron Paul on. I wanted to get him to give his take about the election coming up, who he thought's going to win, and what's this whole vibe about, what do you think's going to happen, and specifically to ask him about Elon Musk's desire to cut $2 trillion. And so, I wanted to have him on Tuesday. I wanted to book him earlier in the week, but they had availability on Thursday. So I thought it was really weird. I'm going to interview Ron Paul on Halloween. That's strange. Of course, there's a lot of symbolism to what happened there, because I would say that when Ron Paul said to my question, would you be willing to help Elon if he asked you to cut government in this program he's going to do, would you help him? And he said, well, I'm not, yes, but I'm not looking. He said in a very kind of meek way, like Ron Paul's known for, I'm not looking for a job. He's 89. He's not looking to go start a whole new, long, full-time job in DC. No one's expecting that, nor did I think that when I was asking that question. I just wanted to see if he'd be a consultant, help him, and really have his vision and his wisdom and his integrity guiding Elon's hunt to cut government. And I thought it'd be a perfect team, Elon Musk, this Rocket Man, Iron Man character, Ron Paul, the original guy, the guy with the been there since the 70s telling the same message. And so, I felt like I was doing a little bit of matchmaking. I had no idea at the time, of course, that it would blow up like it did, reaching 50 million people with each meme that happened after that. But it's incredible. It was a lightning in a bottle moment. Somebody said it's like flipping a coin toss and getting heads 50 times in a row. It was just like the universe, God aligned the universe to make that thing happen. And I think the narrative is it had to be on Halloween because that was the biggest deep state scare they've ever had. When you hear Dr. Ron Paul say he's willing to help the richest man, one of the most powerful men in the world, clean house, that's a scary moment, because now we're getting serious if that actually is executed. Now we're going to get serious. If here's the big question, okay, I'm not a Pollyanna here. This is not a blank check. I am not giving a blank check endorsement to whatever the Trump administration does. This is the opportunity to do something very special. God gave us an opportunity, and it's up to the free choice of the people involved in the decision-making situations. All of them, we know the names, and some we don't know.
Yeah.
To make the right choice. A neighbor's choice, right?
Amen. Another part of your conversation with Ron Paul that I found really interesting was when you were talking to him about all the health stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, with the Robert Kennedy thing, right?
Yeah, because that's an angle that you often don't you don't hear Ron Paul talk a whole lot about the health angle, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, but for people that don't, Ron Paul's background, he's been a medical doctor since like since the 1960s, I think.
Yeah.
So he was in the OBGYN, I think. And you were talking to him, and he said that I remember him saying that he graduated from medical school, I think he said in like 1960 or something. And I remember him telling you that he had a very different view on medicine when he graduated from medical school, and he said that he always had the inclination toward natural remedies and natural things, and toward exercise. But he said that he's grown more and more skeptical of mainline medicine the older he's gotten, and he said that really accelerated after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And you're specifically talking to him about like RFK Jr.
Ray Peat.
And Make America Healthy Again and Ray Peat. Yes.
Yeah, see, I like to do multiple cross sections, you know. I mean, that's why we do what we
Yeah.
do. So I can't help myself but to ask another great hero of mine I got to know, you know, towards the end of his life was Dr. Ray Peat, the late great Ray Peat, and he was a pioneer in understanding the toxic effects, the estrogenic effects of a lot of different, you know, substances, particularly PUFAs, polyunsaturated
Yeah.
fatty acids, which are in the seed oil products and also in fish oil products and chicken fat and pork fat, which all should be very avoided. And, you know, Ray Peat is someone who has a little bit different politics than Ron, but I know he would be very happy with the Trump win, and he would be very
Yeah.
happy at the thought of a Ron Paul because he was more of an anarcho. I don't know. I would say Ray Peat was an anti-state communitarian would be a way to put it. You know what I mean? You don't need the state. We can have mutual aid society. That's kind of his politics. But he was also very pragmatic, and he liked the first Trump win, although he didn't like, you know, how the outcome went with how things got out of control. But he understood the need to build alliances wherever you could. And I know that he knew about Ron Paul stuff, and he probably would be very ecstatic at the thought that Ron Paul could have a seat at the table if he desires, and if the Trump administration keep its word and doesn't do a token thing. I don't want to see a token thing where they say, hey, Ron, come out to the ribbon cutting. We're going to cut 5 people out of the EPA. Oh, I mean, come on. Ron wouldn't do that anyways. Okay.
No.
But the point is we don't want to exploit the good work and credibility of people like Ron Paul who have put in the hard work of teaching and sticking by the principles of lawful governance and honest governance, right? And so that's why, you know, you don't want to have that kind of gimmick. But as it pertains to the Make America Healthy Again thing, there was another interesting serendipity moment for my show because the other guest, another friend of mine, Joel Salatin, the great regenerative agriculture farmer, I always call him the Ron Paul of regenerative agriculture, or, you know, whatever, you know, he's like the guy, he's the guy you go to for the classic, you know, leading the cause for that movement. He's been on Rogan and all that, but he's been on my show many times. I've gotten to know him, had many opportunities to break bread with him and get to know him on a personal level. He's a great person. And I, you know, the other guests, so I had 2 guys lined up for what's your take about the election the week before the election. Ron Paul, Joel Salatin. Now, Joel couldn't make it because he had traveling obligations. But I just thought it was so cool that, you know, after the election, Joel Salatin, we hear, could be in line to be a senior advisor for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
It's amazing.
And it's like, my goodness. I mean, this is like, it's like A Neighbor's Choice. An episode of A Neighbor's Choice has now become the politics in terms of the culture and even if it doesn't work, because I'm very aware of the fact that you've got all these entrenched special interests that have run this thing since World War II or whatever. Since after World War II or whatever, that have consolidated so much power and hardball power and soft power, blackmail, and God knows what else. And so much inertia and, you know, kissing tails and all the stuff that brown nosers do that are all around Mar-a-Lago and all around Trump world and all around those departments of agriculture, USDA and all that. That I'm not under no illusion that in any normal circumstance, a Joel Salatin and a Thomas Massey could walk right in the front door and just get things done. I mean, if Trump really wants it, if he's really got God moving things and he's surrendering to God's grace and allowing God to do it, which is always a possibility. Even the worst scoundrel can do that. And I don't think Trump is that. So I know that Trump has the ability to let God move instead of big Tyson chicken or big Purdue or big, you know, big Monsanto to move. We don't need that. But he has the opportunity to let a Massey and a Salatin do that. He's got the right now, he's got the mandate. If he wants it, those guys could get in there, but it's going to take a great amount of providential blessing and timing to get that to happen.
And you know, this the Make America Healthy Again um uh, mandate. I think that may be the most important thing for the Trump administration to get right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, beyond everything else. You know, that's something that'll have the longest lasting impact on the country, and I think that's something that could end up truly building a bridge to people that are currently not part of the MAGA movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to people that are left wing and progressive and everything, because you know, I do think we have to pay homage to the old school liberals and the old school leftists and stuff who were the ones who really launched like the modern day farmers market movement and everything. You know, they weren't the only ones, but they were probably the most the most instrumental in launching that movement toward localism. You know, you had a lot of other people too, but you know, I think that's a group that would really respond to the Trump administration doing the Make America Healthy Again stuff right. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's a crossover. There's always been an opportunity for a crossover there, hasn't there?
Yeah.
And I think that's what Kennedy represents. I mean, he's a Kennedy Democrat, right? That's what he does.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much he'll be able to get through with what he wants, but we certainly have to keep a positive, optimistic attitude about it, right? You know, because it's not gonna happen if we have a defeatist mindset. And I'm very concerned about all the neocons. And I have to say, man, I really appreciate what Ron did, because, you know, we do the interview on Friday, excuse me, on Thursday, and I put the headline, you know, Ron Paul gave kind of a humble, understated yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the headline, you know, Ron Paul says he'll help, willing to help Elon. You know, if that's the headline. We start sharing it. We have a humble Twitter account. We don't have hundreds of thousands of followers. That's not something that we've focused on trying to slave away at the algorithm. But, you know, we thought, you got this small account. Can we really get this news story out there at this clutch moment, which could change things and put a real credibility and a real credible voice in the room with the Elon Musk task force to cut spending? Right. And so I'm thinking, how do we get this out there? I start getting my friends, people, even like you know, hey, tweet this, share this, reply, you know, boost this, share this with anybody. See if we can get the news out that someone's willing to hear how you could help, you know, if that's something they want.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Ron would never ask for something like this himself. He's too humble.
No.
He's all about ideas. And I know it's about ideas, but when a person is a kind of an icon for ideas, they have real weight if they want to help. And Ron Paul has that. Yeah. And so I was like, how's this going to take off? It's like a David Goliath thing, you know? The real critical thing that happened was when I got into the hands of a editor at a news outlet, the Post Millennial, and they did a great story writing up what happened in that interview. And they cut clips from my show and embedded it and got the facts right. A lot of these news outlets, Fox News has covered it, and other places, The Hill, and they get some of the facts wrong, but I got to give credit to the Post Millennial, because they did a great write up, and they did it quick after I sent it. And when that happened, that story gets up on Twitter, and that's the story that Elon Musk, you know, it catches his eye, and he sees that, oh, wait, there's something there. And he says, Ron Paul, I'm glad to have Ron Paul join the Department of Government Efficiency. And that was when, so Elon sees the story written about us. He responds, yes. So it's like a matchmaking. You go to somebody, hey, would you help if this guy, he's really good at rockets. He wants to cut $2 trillion. He's got an opportunity. He says he's going to do it. Would you help him do that? Okay, yeah, if you wanted me to. Then you go to the other guy. How are you going to get the world's richest man's attention? At the time, I had 4,000 Twitter followers. That's literally Dave versus Goliath. That's taking a pebble and slinging it and go,
yeah.
How are you going to get 222 million? I tried to ask a lot of guys who say they're libertarian to tweet out. They didn't do it. It's okay. Busy. You know, they're selling T-shirts. but the real things matter in the clutch moment. Okay. You can spend a lifetime making money off of t-shirts. Did that do anything for liberty, or did you have a good time? It's fine. We need people to make t-shirts. But the point is, we also need people to be able to do something and see an idea right in the middle of a clutch moment and act. And that's leadership. And I have to give a shout out to folks who aren't even libertarian, man. You got people out there grifting off of the legacy of what Ron Paul built.
Yeah.
Making a lot of money, and they didn't do anything. That's fine. We love them. No, not going to, get mad at anybody. But people who aren't even libertarian and don't even go in that world of the liberty movement went to bat for this message. And I got to give a shout out to folks like Laverne Spicer, Raw Egg Nationalist, Surat Dasgupta, Dr. Robert Malone, an icon of the pandemic, was fighting back against the pandemic response. Dr. Robert Malone was awesome helping when I'd ask. Indian Bronson. Again, that's just not somebody that we might even have disagreement. A lot of these people, I probably have massive disagreements on a lot of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But they understand a great thing when they see it.
Yeah.
And they're humble, and that's what requires a good leader. When you have an account and you say to yourself, I've got an opportunity to do great things with this. And you don't sit there and say, oh, well, David's account's small. I can't help him. That would help him. I don't want to help. And by the way, a lot of the things that I asked people to boost were not even my post. It was other people's posts, like Ron's post or other things that I wanted to rally attention to. Yeah, a lot of these people that shared this, we may not have the same politics at all, big disagreements, but they are the kind of people who are good people. Like, they're not there to grift, right? A lot of grifter types people, you send them a message, if you're not at a certain follower number, they're so mimetic, they can't lift a finger because they feel like, maybe you're competition for them one day, or maybe, that, they're so big they can't showcase an account that's not at a certain level. That kind of childishness is not what a leader looks like. And that's never what you do to change culture or society or anything. And it takes folks that, again, might have wild disagreements, not even grifting anything on liberty movement, and they're the ones that did the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
For Ron Paul. And I mean, and that's what we were doing. We were trying to give, the point was this, man. He didn't get the credit he deserves for a lot of the stuff he did, because he doesn't ask for the credit, because he's about the ideas. But in order to get the ideas their proper shine, sometimes you have to bring the icon back into view again, whether he likes it or not. He asked us to support him in his campaigns, but he's still out there in the public eye. He's not retired. In my interview, he said, I would be miserable if I wasn't doing the show every day.
I remember him saying
that. So when
I
heard him say that, I heard a fight in that man's voice. I don't care what people, you can correct me if you're wrong. I don't care what your age is. I saw more fight in him than people a fraction of his age.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I heard that's all part of this whole part of this story. Is I heard a fight in his eye, in his voice there. No one's asking, no one's expecting him to be showing up in the room with Elon every time they have a DOGE meeting. That's not what we're asking for. We're asking for him as a figurehead to help lead the conversation nationally to get Elon and Trump in the right direction. And that leverage is extremely important for people who want to have a country that's not bankrupt and completely sold out to a bunch of oligarchs and foreign interests.
Yeah.
It's critical that we get this done. And so I got to give a shout out to folks. Again, I'm not going to get everybody's name out there. Some people want to stay behind the scenes, but I got to give a shout out to people like Jack Brewer, who's a wonderful man, Jeff Deist, former, president of the Mises Institute and former chief of staff for Ron, and he works with Monetary Metals, who are other good friends of ours. Wilfred Riley, Dr. Wilfred Riley. He's been a longtime frequent guest of my show. He's a professor in Kentucky, and he was recently featured prominently in that movie, Am I a Racist, with Matt.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And as the start, I'll tell you a story with that one. Dr. Wilfred Riley, I had an idea. I said, I was trying to get Elon's attention because we got a lot of memes that were driving 50 million views with Ron Paul and Elon's face and that, the whole office meme, the Office Space meme. And, did you see the Office Space meme? So yeah, you got the meme there. This meme right here what would you say you are? What would you say you do here? This is from Office Space. This is Elon Musk and Ron Paul as the consultants in the famous Office Space movie. Elon tweets that out after I make the matchmake happen with that news story placed at the right time, and it hits Elon's face. He says, I'd love to have Ron Paul. And then that meme comes up. Show it again. And that meme gets 50 million views instantly. Ron Paul trends nationwide, worldwide, all over the place on Friday night. And and it just keeps going the whole weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. He's still driving the narrative. And everybody, there's a lot of misinformation. Some people were saying that Ron wanted a job. No, he didn't want it. That's not at all. I asked him, okay. He doesn't, it takes a third party to push this kind of thing together sometimes, because somebody doesn't want something. They're not needy. They don't need it. They're good where they're at. And I didn't see Elon say anything about Ron Paul joining either. So Elon did reply. I mean, Ron Paul replied in one tweet before this happened. Ron Paul, replied to an Elon Musk video about the $2 trillion cut idea that he said. Mm-hmm. He said, why don't you start with the Federal Reserve and stuff like that? And then Elon replied to that and said, it's got to be done or something. But there was no, you know what I mean? That was it. That was just a kind of meeting in the night and moving past. But I wanted to see an alliance strategically form, and that's what happened. And where it goes now is, who knows, right? It's concerning to hear some of these names being floated around already in the Trump administration that will not deliver the goodness. People like Rick Grinnell, people like Mike Pompeo, and some of these names that are. Some of them are lesser known names that nobody knows how to respond to that, are also just bad and so forth. So that's not good. But I want to give a little note about Wilfred Riley, the story with him, why I got to give him credit too. I looked on Elon Musk's page. Who does he follow? Right. I'm like, how do I get Elon's attention? In the course of all these days, there was different things I was trying to push to help not just them do that, but make a whole process of building that alliance. There's a whole process that I thought needed to happen in the public eye. I wanted it independently, like the independent grassroots campaign, to say, who does Elon Musk follow that I'm friends with? He's got 800 people he follows on Twitter. And I found one guy, Wilfred Riley, who's a friend of mine, who's, the professor in Kentucky. And I said, Wilfred, I texted him, I need your help. He goes, I'm getting on a plane. What do you need? I said, I need you to help me tweet Elon, tag him. You're like one of 800 people he follows. You've got to be able to get his attention. I can't get his attention with some of the other things I'm trying to do. I can't get him directly. I need your attention. And so he goes, okay. So he does this thing, he tags Elon. Come on, Elon. I was trying to move the conversation forward after that initial meme thing happened. And by the way, Elon tweeted like several other people, random smaller accounts, even, people would get, all of a sudden he'd just see their thing. They'd post a meme with Ron Paul's face and said, I wasn't going to vote for Trump. Now I am. And then he would do a fire emoji. Then there would be somebody else that would do a meme, and it would be a picture of Ron Paul or something and some funny thing. And then Elon would do another fire thing and reply and repost. So he's been really pushing that Ron Paul thing a lot. But I wanted to make, because Ron Paul invited him on the Liberty Report. And I was like, I'd love to see that on Monday, So I was trying to, do whatever independent grassroots things we could do to make that happen. And the timing wasn't there. But I have to give credit again to Dr. Paul, because on Monday, when all that attention was there, and now he finally has a show to respond to all the things that we set in motion since he did his last show, he takes that moment to say, Trump, beware of the neocons. So he's doing the right thing. Well, he's doing the right thing by saying, focus on the things that really need to be cut. Don't cut the welfare for the people. Cut the welfare for the corporations.
Yep.
And then Daniel McAdams put up a picture of B-52s being sent to the Middle East. He says, start with cutting that, And I thought, that's a Christ-like way, folks, that when you get all the momentum, Ron's still teaching us by example there, when you get all the momentum, and a lot of lesser people would say, oh, thank you, Ron. I mean, thank you, Elon, and thank you, Donald, and just play it safe. No, that's not how Ron Paul is. He's got more fight in him than most people, and he sticks to his guns. And he was still using that momentum to frame it in the direction of peace, which is the most important thing that a Christian can advocate for. And to his credit, he stuck to it not only on the Monday show, but the Tuesday show as well, the day of the election. And Elon Musk responded to it and said, I agree. He publicly replied to his show, I agree. We don't need to have neocons and warmongers.
Yeah.
And then he shares another thing from Ron Paul, and he shares another article that Chris Rossini posted on Ron Paul's Twitter page. So Elon's actively really enjoying this, and I just hope that it all pays off. I hope that everybody can get the massive cuts, that they could be done in a wise and smart way, but in a deep and true way, in a lasting way that can help us avoid a nasty bankruptcy and help us be free. We need to be free from the debt, bondage to debt. We need to be free from this usurious Federal Reserve System. We need to be free. And we have that freedom within our grasp. But folks, it's not going to come from government. It really won't. And Ron's right about that.
Yeah.
There's a difference between government and power, by the way. And power is not always what we think it is. It's not always about overt grasping for something. Sometimes it's about these understated ways of shifting the culture and the vaunted Overton window in a direction that liberates people's minds from the bottom up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and really, I think the core of the core principle of the entire Ron Paul movement that makes it kind of different from your mainline libertarian point of view on things is Ron Paul would always say that the most important argument is always the moral argument. Yeah. And it's not the economic argument. It's not the argument from efficiency. It's the moral argument, which is so important. And that's something that we have to remember in America today, because so many people have lost sight of that.
It's not about it's not about people and personalities. It is about principles.
Yeah.
And the way you do it doesn't happen with strong arming people to follow your perfect philosophy either. It's not that either. It is about following the way that Jesus would do things. Jesus' power is made perfect in weakness.
Yeah.
Weakness by whose standards, of course, right? By the standards of the world, by the standards of the princes that are fallen. And that's what we wrestle against, by the way. We wrestle against the principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what we contend with, not personalities of the flesh, right? Yeah. It's not about personality issues. It's about contending with mimetic frames of mind that have kept us in a darkened place that we can liberate ourselves from if we so choose. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, Stanford professor. He helped. Seed oil disrespecter. We had a coalition of a lot of broad people. Default Friend. She's a great writer that was covering this whole story as it was happening. Colonel Douglas McGregor was sharing things that I posted. I was very kind of him. Rob Schneider, the famous Saturday Night Live actor, he's one of the first people to share and comment. That was really nice of him. So all of that is what led to this, and we're in an exciting time, folks. We'll have to stay tuned to see what happens next, but I have to say, you might want to follow my Twitter because we're breaking news now. And
yes,
I'm used to being the guy that's telling the story, not necessarily the one inside of it, but I'm happy to help however it happens, right?
David, on a closing note, I want to show. So this is my copy of Ron Paul's book, End the Fed.
Yeah.
And I think this book came out, and I think it came out in 2008 or somewhere. May have been 2009 it came out. But if you look at the back, of the book, you may not be able to see it with the glare. Up in the top corner, it's very, very blurry. It's hard to see, but you can actually see you and I at the Rally for the Republic, at the Campaign for Liberty Rally for the Republic convention.
I didn't know you were going to show that, but that is true, and you can't see it on the camera. But if you look at it in real, you can see our little faces, like little ghostly little faces in the darkness.
Yeah, it's the same grainy quality as like a photograph of Bigfoot or a photograph of like an alien or something.
Yeah, and that was a fun rally, man. That was a really
That was a
a pick.
blast up there.
That was one of our favorite moments in our life. Everybody was
Yeah.
cool, and it was liberals. And it's a picture of what you just painted about what
Yes.
Robert Kennedy and all these guys could do. There was
Yep.
liberal people. We were sharing taxi rides with a Pentecostal couple from Kentucky, and then a
Yep.
progressive Silicon Valley venture capitalist, and a hippie
Yes.
here and
Yeah.
a hippie there, and a guy living in a tent wandering the world, and he's a hippie guy, and there's a guy who's a
He was
Wall Street
from
guy.
Wyoming.
Yeah, I mean, you got all these people, and we're all here together for peace and bringing things to the right justice
Yeah.
that our conscience tells us. And Ron Paul started that, and you know who else was there as the MC? We got to give him credit. Tucker Carlson. He was an early
Yes.
guy,
Yep.
and now look how ascendant he is. He's driving the whole conservative media world, and he was early on with some of that. So
And remember Jesse Ventura was there, and Jesse Ventura said, "I said don't start the revolution without me, and I'm here."
yeah, he's here.
Yeah.
Good wrestling showman, huh? I
Yeah.
appreciate your time, and yeah, just like in my wrestling experiences, sometimes all it takes to crown a new world champion is a little push, and that's what God allowed us to do,
Amen.
and what He did in a lot of different people, played a lot of different roles, seen and unseen, and we thank everybody. And it's not about winning for Trump. Trump, that's great, and we hope good things come out of it, but it's about the opportunity for cultural renewal, something different, something more positive. It's not about personalities. It's about what's right and wrong. It's about preserving what we know is true and right, ethically and morally, and that's what we're going to do. So thanks, Shane. I appreciate you coming on. All right.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, David.